100 days since Russia began its invasion of Ukraine. We have a report from a town in the Donbass region, which is in Russia's sights. The World Food Programme warns that more than 80 million people in East Africa are facing acute food shortages because of the fighting in Ukraine. It is 100 days since Russia began its invasion of Ukraine. President Zelensky marked the occasion by praising the country's resistance. But he's admitted Russia now controls 1/5 of his country and that nearly 14 million people have been forced to flee. Thousands of civilians have been killed. On the ground, Vladimir Putin's focus is now on the Donbass region in the east, where his forces continue to make gains. But the governor of the Luhansk region says Ukrainian troops have recaptured parts of Severodonetsk. If confirmed, it would mean Russian forces control only half the city. Our international correspondent, Orla Guerin, has been with Ukrainian troops near Bakhmut, one of the towns in Russia's path.
A dirt track that leads to a grinding war. We're in Donbass, the key battleground. The Russians are 2 miles down the road. This area around Bakhmut is still in Ukrainian hands for now. But the enemy is approaching from 2 sides. Troops prepare to face one more day of war. Seasoned veterans, tempered by fire. They've been fighting Russian-backed separatists here in the east since 2014. Among them, Anton. Well, we just had to take more cover, get more protection inside our armoured car. There was an incoming attack. The troops say it was a cluster bomb and it landed less than a mile away. Now, in the last half an hour or so, there have been constant warnings about incoming fire. We've had to run and take cover. The troops have taken cover. And we've heard plenty of outgoing fire. It's very clear the war in this area is extremely active. And the Russians are trying hard to push forward. And as Ukrainian forces try to hold their ground, the trenches turn to graves. Have you lost many friends?
Да.
Yes, says Ivan.
Довольно много.
Quite a lot.
Довольно много.
And he says the Russians have already captured an area half the size of Italy.
Половину Италии захватили.
Troops here say President Putin's men learned lessons from their defeat outside Kyiv. Anton tells me they changed their tactics and now rely on massive artillery fire.
Cover.
Once again, it was coming our way. And as the Russians advance, civilians flee from towns and cities here. It's now 100 days, and counting, of wrenching separations. Vladimir Putin calls this liberation. If he succeeds here, his ambitions may not stop at Ukraine. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Donbass.
But now, what could Moscow's next move be? Well, it's thought that Russia wants to push south and west, which would cut off vital access to the Black Sea coast. Putin's forces tried this in March and failed. But attacks in the region have increased in the past week, and there are fears that his forces may try again. Laura Bicker reports on the battle for the south of Ukraine from the key port city of Mykolaiv.
The farewell scenes have become agonisingly familiar. Ludmila holds her children for as long as she can, trying to put a brave face on it. I'll see them again when the bombs stop, she tells me. But no one knows how long that will be.
We've been hearing quite a few thuds in the distance, but in theory this village should be out of range for now. The Ukrainians have already pushed the Russians out of this city once. The fear is they're going to have to do it again, and that's why many people have made the decision to leave.
They are fleeing a war of rockets and artillery. A cruise missile tore through the regional administrative building in March, killing 36 people. This rubble is a reminder that Mykolaiv is key to Russia's strategy to seize the entire southern coast. The wail of the siren, a prelude to yet another exchange of firepower. For Ukraine, holding the line here is crucial.
If Mykolaiv was defeated, but it wasn't, they could have chance to move forward to Odessa, move forward to Kryvyi Rih, to the center of Ukraine.
Life has become increasingly difficult. Water is a precious resource. Supplies were cut off after Russia seized the neighbouring city of Kherson. But many are choosing to stay. This may be a Kremlin target, but it's also home. We travel the path of Russia's retreat to the south of Mykolaiv. Nearly half this village have returned after the invading forces were pushed back, but most are reliant on aid. This place is for children to play, not for shells to explode, Natalia tells me. She planted flowers in the bomb craters.
Thank God we're holding on. Sometimes I'm very scared that they might just kidnap me and take me away. On the other hand, I am sure, and I keep telling this to everyone else, that they have no business here. They should know better than loitering on our land.
Natalia tells me that when I leave, she'll sit down and cry. She's lived 100 days in both defiance and dread. Russian tanks have been at her door once. She's determined they will not be back. Laura Bicker, BBC News, Mykolaiv.
UN agencies meeting in Geneva have issued dire warnings about the war's consequences for both Ukraine and the world. They said nearly 16 million Ukrainians urgently needed humanitarian assistance. And the head of the World Food Programme said there were more than 80 million people acutely food insecure, acutely hungry in Africa, up from about 50 million people this time last year. Now, speaking at the White House on the rising cost of living, President Biden described the crisis as Putin's price hike. He said Ukraine had 20 million tons of grain it hadn't been able to export. But President Putin says Russia is ready to guarantee the safe export of Ukrainian grain via ports on the Azov and Black Seas that it controls. He denied Moscow was preventing Ukrainian ports from exporting the grain. Mr. Putin was speaking after talks in Sochi with the head of the African Union, who told him that Africa was an indirect economic victim because of its reliance on Ukrainian and Russian cereals and fertilizer.
You are quite welcome to export wheat via seaports under Ukrainian control. First of all, the Black Sea ports, Odessa and the nearby ports. We didn't mind the Ukrainian ports, it was Ukraine. I've told our colleagues many times, let them clear the mines so the ships loaded with wheat can leave these ports. We will guarantee their safe passage with no problems.
The governor of Luhansk province says that Ukrainian troops have pushed back the advancing Russian army, recapturing 20% of territory lost in the eastern city of Severodonetsk. Let's talk to our correspondent Joe Inwood. He's in Kyiv for us this morning. Joe, good morning to you. And as we've said many times over recent weeks about the ebb and flow of this conflict, Ukrainian forces on the front foot seemingly. Will they be able to sustain this defensive, I suppose, is the big question.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the Russians, the general trajectory of this over the last few weeks has been of Russian advances. They have been taking territory slowly, piece by piece, but under huge artillery barrages. The Ukrainians have just been pushed back and back. This is the first time I think we've heard a report of Ukrainian counteroffensive in this area particularly, really as long as I can remember. The question, as you say, is how much this can be sustained. Is this simply that the Russians tried to advance too far and have been caught out, or are we seeing something more sustained here? I think probably it's going to be the former. The general tenor of the Ukrainian position was that they were going to try and make a strategic withdrawal, maybe defend a river that's nearby called Seversky Donets, which is a better defensive position. But you never know. Anything is possible. Sergei Hadai, the governor of the Luhansk region in which Severodonetsk sits, says that they are going to hold this city, and he's waiting for the arrival of new heavy artillery that's coming in from the Americans, guided long-range missiles, and he says those could make all the difference.